Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Let's Productions. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. See you there.
Hi, we are Melanie
and Ian
from ET Connections on YouTube and mountain-gate.com.
And you're listening to the Alien Strand podcast with Donald Ledesma.
Catch us on YouTube and hit like and subscribe. We'll see you there.
Those sort of marks, is that pretty typical of what contact experiencers have on their body after an event?
Certainly involving abductions. There have been many cases of triangular marks, circular marks, and other types of strange marks which are inexplicable. I would think something to do with DNA, because I have been reliably informed by a Washington source that there is a hybridization program in process. A group of aliens plan to produce hybrids, combination of human beings and their own beings.
I will attempt to formulate a strong scientific theory behind this ongoing mass psychological phenomenon of alien-related self-deception.
Christi, Texas, and you're listening to the Alien Strand podcast with Donald Ledesma. Buying or selling, visit me at kellygreenrealtor.com or visit me on my Facebook page, Kelly Green Realtor. See you there.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Alien Strand podcast. I'm your host, Donald Ledesma. And welcome to today's show. It'll be a pretty good one. It's been a while, but I'm back in the saddle again. And we're ready to get some more stories out there. But before we get going, you can catch us on Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and alienstrand.com. Check us out there. We're on like 25 platforms. Now we have a new platform called Verbal, VURBLE. So if you have that platform, check us out there, okay? And, you know, we're on iHeart, Spotify, all those good ones, you know, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, CastBox, Deezer, Podchaser. You know, we're all over the place. And because we're trying to get the message out to everybody out there, you know, so that way we can, you know, find out a little bit more about the unknown, you know, these UFOs that are out there, and aliens, and of course Bigfoot, and then we have the unexplained as well, you know, mysteries, how people disappear sometimes, you know, and you know, I got some great podcasts on that. You know, if you go back, you can check out those. And I've been coming out like maybe once every 3 weeks because we're super, super busy, but I am still getting the content out to you as much as I can, okay? So, we're going to have a really, really good story today, a couple of stories, and, they're going to pretty much coincide in a sense, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a bit. I don't know if you guys been to the Facebook page, but if you have, I just posted a new video here maybe about 3 days ago, and it was of a UFO, and it said it was in Arizona. When you look at this thing, it's spinning, but it's such a close video of it that you see it just like changing form and changing to another form, but it doesn't move very quickly as far as like direction, speed, its velocity. It's just in a small, slow motion movement, but in motion, right? So, and what we're trying to figure out is that, a lot of people were asking, is this CGI? Does it look CGI? You know what? To me, it doesn't. I've seen this kind of craft before, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago on a video somebody threw out there, right? So, and it had almost I'm not going to say identical because it didn't have the identical movement, because the other one had more like a shorter spinning rotation, right? And then it kind of changed into a form and it took off. I'm talking about the older one. This one had a longer spinning rotation, and it just stayed in that kind of blob looking form. So if you have a chance, go check that video out. I mean, it's breaking out there from Facebook, from Alien Strand, because everybody's sharing, and that's what we want everybody to do is get the information out to as many people as we can. And if we find out later it's a hoax, well, we will give it an update, to people out there, just in case you start sharing it or you start seeing it. At least you'll know what it actually is. But until now, we're going to just go ahead and think of this one as a genuine craft. That one really, really blew me away when I posted it, and it blew a lot of people away. A lot of my good friends out there, in the ufology, they called me and sent me some messages on it. And, it was just kind of very weird looking. But it almost looked like it was alive. Like Dr. Greer said about the crafts out there, that these things are alive and they can be controlled by its operator, right? And it can change form in any different kind of way it can. I don't know if you've seen a lot of Dr. Greer's videos out there. He has the Unacknowledged. Yeah, it's a very, very good documentary. I really highly recommend that video. If you don't know anything about it, if you're new to ufology, well, welcome to today's show, and welcome to ufology. And that's a good place to start. Start with Dr. Greer there. With Bob Lazar, there with Area 51, look at his videos, and because they're explaining to you exactly the things that they saw and they experienced, not just with themselves, but they were working under a government entity, right? And they were able to get their stories out and still have their stories out today without any harm to them, right? Like, we always hear all these stories about how all these people from the past, after giving their story out there, where they miraculously disappeared or they ended up dead somewhere, unfortunately, right? And because they gave something away they weren't supposed to. But now these days, there's so much information out there. Even now, in my last podcast, I don't know if you heard it, that's the first thing I brought up, how they're talking about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And that's what, the United States government is calling it. So they actually acknowledge that these crafts are out there. They just don't understand where they're from, who's driving them, and they're getting a team together. Supposedly, they're going to have their team ready by this month here in July. So I believe around, probably around the 20th, 22nd. I can't remember the exact date, but that's when they're supposed to have this team that's going to be investigating a lot of these UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, what they call them. I call them UFOs, what they are, because that's what they are. identify flying objects. I explained that to you guys on my last podcast. Now, we're going to talk about that just for a second. If you heard my last podcast, it's called Dimensions. And that podcast, it might have thrown you for a loop, a little bit. It's the only reason I got that out there and I explained it the way I did is because I wanted you to open your mind just a little bit more and just to think about what the possibilities of these extraterrestrials could be or where they're going, right? And that's all that was. I'm looking at everything in a scientific aspect, right, of how it can be broken down in that sense. So if it was a little too deep for you, that's why. And if you're new to ufology and you just started listening to that and you heard that dimensions, it'd probably freak you out just for a second, And a lot of people in the ufology, if you're new to it, they don't understand it yet. It's good to dig into it first, watch these videos, watch these people that have been around for such a long time, these professional people that have been out there in ufology, they've been doing it for a long time. Check out their videos, check out all their documentaries before you go out there and, and you make a judgment for yourself. So that way at least you can figure out, okay, it's a possibility. This is what's happening here. This is what's happening there. Then you could actually make a determination yourself. And then if you want to comment on anything that somebody says, well, you have a better idea of what you are saying. I think about it this way. Some people, when they come into ufology, they think that everything's like a sci-fi movie. When these extraterrestrials are walking around, they're getting beamed up in this certain way, or the way they interact with people. When, in reality, all these stories that I tell, it's not like that. It's the total opposite. It's not like a sci-fi movie. So it's a totally different sense of reality that people actually deal with when they get abducted, right? And which brings me to my stories that I'm going to talk about today. There are two stories. One of them has been on my podcast prior, probably about 6 months ago. It's called the Allagash 4. So if you have a chance, go back and listen to that so you can pretty much catch what this podcast is going to be about today. This one, I call it the Kansas Connection. And the only reason I wanted to bring this story out, it of course, everything catches my attention right away, and I read up on it. So there was an incident here that happened to these two ladies, and they put their stories out there, of course, like what a lot of people did back in the day. But they didn't want to get their names out there, because if you've heard a lot of my podcasts, I always talk about people that when, back in the 60s, 70s, even in the early 80s and late 80s as well, they don't want to mention their names, right? Because, back then they think, you were crazy if you were talking about aliens, right? UFOs, things you saw in the sky. Nobody really believed in that stuff too much. I mean, it was out there, but it just really, people weren't grasping it like they do today. I don't know if you've been all over Facebook, but there's hundreds of groups out there now on extraterrestrials and aliens and UFOs. So it's out there a lot more than it was back then. But the story that I'm going to tell you today, their names have been changed only to protect their identity and in their personal lives, because back then people would get harassed, right? So they decided to do this, and they contacted MUFON and everything afterwards, with a psychiatrist as well, and that's how they got everything documented. But let's get to the very beginning of this story. So this incident happened November 7th, 1989.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, But you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
So these two women were heading east from Colorado. And this incident took place close to Goodland, Kansas, right? So that's, if you're going from Colorado to Goodland, Kansas, it's, I don't know, maybe about 70 miles or so in between. So when they were doing this conference, they were in a conference in Aspen. They decided to go ahead and drive home that to at least to Garland. They were going to try to make it, to Goodland. They were trying to make it that far, for the night, and then they could just spend the night there and go home the next day, right? Because they were heading to St. Louis, Missouri. That was their home. So Susan and Jennifer, of course, they were driving east on I-70 from Colorado on their way home to St. Louis, Missouri. They were driving home at night, returning from that conference in Aspen. Now, right there in Garland it's Sherman County, and it's like 20 miles to the Colorado border. So they decided, as soon as they passed Denver, they decided to stop at Flagler and get some fuel, right? By then, it was about 11:30 at night. So they just decided to, let's go ahead and just keep on going. And let's just go ahead and try to make it to Goodland. As soon as they passed the Colorado border, they said they were driving about 75 to 80 miles an hour. And they were just trying to get a little bit closer to home, right? Of course, it was late, 11:30 p.m. So after they left Flagler, of course, after they got fuel, they just noticed that there was a bright object in the sky while they were driving. They paid no mind to it at first. They just thought it was a star. So after a few miles, they noticed that this star or bright light was keeping up with the vehicle. They said they were just kept on looking at it through the windshield. They said it was zigzagging occasionally. Had some jerks and some stops. So at that point, they knew they were dealing with something different. It was not a star. All of a sudden, they saw flashing lights. Turned red. Green lights. And these green lights were around the object as well. So it wasn't just that one, it had small objects around it. They said they watched it for about close to an hour while they were driving. They said they noticed a clock on their dashboard. It read 12:40 in the morning. At that point, they decided to pull off to the road, right? So they got off the road, dimmed the headlights of the car, and sat there and watched this object, right? And these other objects around it. All of a sudden, they said, the ball of light dropped down over a field within 100 feet of our car. They stopped and they stared at it. They just couldn't believe what they were seeing. All of a sudden, they said they saw a cone of light with colored rays beneath it. So all of a sudden, in other words, this craft that was standing there in the field, 100 feet from their car, which is very, very close, shot out a beam underneath it, like a cone shape. This is what they were seeing. They said they saw the heat waves coming up from the ground into the light. They noticed the heat as well in front of the car. At that point, Susan started the car and pulled back on the road. They said they were both excited of what they had just witnessed, right? You know, most people will get scared, try to just floorboard it and get out of there, but they just calmly started the car and drove off after they saw what they saw. And on the way to their destination where they were going to spend the night, they were only about 2 miles, I believe about 2 miles away, because I pinpointed it on a map. And there's a little pull-off right there. It's like a rest area. And I think this is where they saw this craft. There's a small patch of trees, probably about a mile northeast of where they were looking. So I'm thinking this is where they saw that craft. But nevertheless, they felt exhausted, scared, right? They arrived a few minutes later in Goodland, at 2:30 in the morning. So this is why I said it was, you got to remember, where they pulled over, close to where they pulled over, it's 12:45 or 12:40. And then when they get to Goodland, it's 2:30 in the morning, not far from where they were at. So we're almost looking at 2 hours had went by. Later, they both experienced missing time. They even had emotional changes. You know, Jennifer suffered nightmares and nosebleeds. Susan suffered the same thing. And there's where she contacted help, right? So Susan contacted MUFON at the time and gave her description of what they witnessed, what they were going through as far as like getting sick, nauseous, nightmares, you know, nosebleeds, just restless sleep, basically, what they were having, both of them. So MUFON put them in contact the psychotherapist named John Carpenter, who also specializes in hypnosis, right? So he does hypnosis as well. At the time when John met up with both of the ladies, at that point, because he was going to interview both of them and put each one under hypnosis, he decided to tell them both, I don't want you to talk to each other from here on out. And because he was doing the experiment on both of them, because he wanted to hear their stories. And he wanted to make sure that their stories, you know, didn't mixed with the other one. You know what I mean? When you try to influence someone in a story. So he wanted just to see if their stories were similar or the same or a little different, right? In other words, a little bit of confliction, but no influence. That's basically what he was trying to do. So under hypnosis, they both recalled being levitated through the light that surrounded the car. And they both remembered being examined by small occupants. Grays, big heads, big eyes, small framed. Susan said, I remembered watching Jennifer examination on the table in the craft. While this was happening, she said she was being told telepathically, quote, this is being done for your mutual benefit. This is what these extraterrestrials, aliens, or grays were telepathically telling them both. This is being done for your mutual benefit. At the time, the doctor, after he finished with them and their stories, after being under hypnosis, he had them both drop photos, right? Or draw pictures of what they had witnessed. He said they both drew similar pictures of the object and the occupants, which were the extraterrestrials that were in these crafts, right? They said even some of them had suction-like cups on their fingers of the grays.
Lean on us.
We are here for you.
You matter.
You are not alone.
Are you feeling overwhelmed? Not sure where to turn? The National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is there for you 24/7. Call or text 988 or chat at 988sc.org. Whether you're having an emergency or you know someone who needs support now, they can help you take the next step towards finding hope and healing.
There is hope. 988sc.org.
And then they both said they remember being levitated back into the car. And after that, they just started to forget the whole encounter completely. And they did all this under hypnosis because they knew something had happened. They just couldn't wrap themselves around, their minds around what exactly occurred. Of course, they have the missing time. Nightmares, nosebleeds. All this has the ingredients for an alien abduction. Everything they talked about has the same ingredients, right? And this is actually similar to something that happened prior, right? It's got a similar story in a sense. But this other story happened in the summer of 1976 in the Allagash wilderness. This is the Allagash 4 podcast that I talked about. Those 4 guys on vacation, and they decided to go out there for a week on a fishing trip. Have a good time. They had Rick, Charlie Foltz, and Jack and Jim Weiner. They were twins. So if you remember that story, this is what they saw. They saw a bright light in the lake while they were all in the canoe, right? But before they went in that canoe, what they did was they decided to light a fire, a big fire, at their campsite by the edge of the water, because it was late at night when they went out. So they wanted some sort of a beacon because it's dark out there. There's no lights out there. I don't know if you've ever been camping before or out there in the wilderness. When you turn off the lights out there, it's dark. And the only thing you're going to see, if you have a nice moonlight outside, you'll be able to see a little bit. But what they did was they lit a fire, a large fire, because they wanted to use it as a beacon. So they all got on this canoe that night. They were drinking a little bit, but they decided to go out there and go fishing. Time when they saw that bright light, they thought it was a plane getting ready to crash. This was coming up over the trees at a low altitude, bright light. So it came up like almost behind the trees and up and over. They thought that plane was going to crash, but actually the light got so close to them that it stopped almost 100 feet in front of them. But it was huge. And on their story, one of the guys, they were all looking at this thing, they didn't know what it was, decided to make contact with a flashlight. Flashed at it, and this thing shot out a huge beam of light at them. Surprised them all after they did that, so they knew they made contact. That's when they figured that something intelligent is inside this craft, or whatever it was at the time. Remember, this is 1976. This was before the story I just told you, way before. So here's where we get similarities as well. They remember levitating into a light. They remember being examined and watching each other being examined. So they were all sitting around in a circle in a table. There was a table in front of them. They were all naked. But one by one, they were getting examined by these creatures. Thing is that these were the same creatures that were described by Susan and Jennifer, right? Exact same ones. Grays, small red eyes. Big eyes. But their eyes were red. They had suction cups on their fingers. They remember what they looked like. Then they were levitated back into the boat. They said they couldn't move. And they were positioned exact same way when they first saw the light. So they remember under hypnosis that they were watching these extraterrestrial little aliens in the water. While these guys were floating down, they were grabbing them and placing them in the boat and positioning their arms, their legs. They remember seeing this to their other friends, what was happening to each other, as they were being repositioned inside the canoe exactly the same way they were when they first saw this bright light, right? And of course, the same exact thing happened. They started to forget the whole incident, like it never happened. They even finished out their camping weekend. But there was one of them out of all four, I believe, that just couldn't get it out of his mind. It was driving him crazy. So that's why he had to get that story out to a lot of people. Out of all four, I think only one of them denied that it happened. And you got to remember, of course, you're looking at 1976, right? They didn't want their names out there. They didn't want people to make fun of them. They didn't want people to scorn them in any kind of way because of the story they had. People thought they were just drunk or they were high or whatever, that this thing didn't happen. If you go back and you look at the stories, there's a lot of stories out there, and there's a few that conflict, but out of all four, only one denied that it happened. And it has similarities to the story I just gave you here in Kansas, right? These women went through the same thing. They experienced the exact same thing as these men did, but 11 years later, were these possibly the same extraterrestrials? We always talk about that there's different kinds of extraterrestrials out there. There's these grays, there's tall ones, there's short ones. There's human-like extraterrestrials. There's some that almost look human and almost look gray. Hybrids? Possibly. If you go back and listen to a lot of my podcasts, you'll hear the different descriptions of their encounters with the extraterrestrial or alien. There's some that look Nordic. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Tall, thin. And of course, we never hear the story of the reptilian, right? It's very rare that you'll hear any abduction with a reptilian. But people always talk about that there's these reptiles and there's reptile alien species out there. Maybe there is. I haven't seen one yet. There's supposed to be a photo floating around there of one that was accidentally caught. Not caught, but as far as the photo was caught. Then it was changed later. Because it wasn't supposed to be seen by the public. I believe it's a photo. I can't remember the name of the company. Well, not company, but the group that's out there. They're almost like WikiLeaks. They posted it and they brought it down as fast as they posted it. But we never hear the stories of the reptilians. Very rare. Very, very rare. And I believe the only reason that, because if they are out there, and if you have gotten abducted, you're not coming back. The books I've read on them and what they're about and what their agenda are, it's just to take over and conquer. And almost like they love to eat humans. And that's what it's all about. That's why you don't hear no stories, because nobody comes back on those. The alien greys, their whole agenda is totally different. They're just trying to survive in a sense, because they can't produce anymore. They can't reproduce. They don't have the genitals anymore. None of that stuff, they don't have it anymore. So they come back, they take the eggs, they take the sperm from men, and they clone. That's why a lot of these stories you hear of people that actually later they get abducted, and then they get abducted again so they can see their children. They actually let them see them. There's a few stories out there like that. They just say that these children have large eyes. They almost look human. They speak telepathically as well as the Greys. You know, a lot of these stories out there that I put out, they're for you to decide. Really, in reality, if you do your homework, and if you're new to ufology, you know, listen to these podcasts, go out there and do your homework, not just on one story, you know, similar to what you're looking for, but dig, 10 different stories within the same story, so that way you'll at least get an idea of where the story originated from, how it ended, where was it recorded, the names, because after a while, sometimes a lot of these stories, the names get changed or times get changed, but you have to go to the source from the very, very beginning. Even if you have to go look at an old book, I recommend that highly, because there's a lot of old books that have been scanned, that have been uploaded to the internet, of course. Those are the ones to go look at. Always good to dig into a good book. Google's not going to tell you everything. Neither is any of these other ones. You really, really have to dig, but a lot of times it'll throw you in different directions. But please do your homework on it, and I hope it helps you make up your mind on what you believe happened. There's a lot of stories, of course, are similar, like these two stories here today. And I wanted to bring out this story because they coincide together. Only because the extraterrestrials did exactly the same thing to them, a different time, different day, but they did the exact same thing. So, I hope you guys enjoyed today's story. And I'm glad y'all came back to listen to Alien Strand podcast. You can find us on 24, 25 platforms, maybe more. We're all over. We're all over the place. Many countries already as well. A lot of people are joining in, spreading the word for Alien Strand. And we really appreciate each and every one of you for doing that. Kind of helps support the cause, right? And, if you can, go to Extraterrestrial Strange Happenings group. Good friends of mine there with Anibal and Jody. Go check them out. Really good group over there. They're strict, too, so no trolling. No trolls there. Go ahead and keep it clean, just like Alien Strand here on Facebook as well. We keep everything clean. Very respectful to each other. I appreciate that from you guys. Thank you for that. But if you want to contact me, you can reach me at 361-245-8000. Again, that's 361-245-8000. And call me on that number or send me a text if you want to be on the show. Be glad to get you on. You got some stories to tell, an abduction, just an encounter, anything, anything of the unknown, Bigfoot, anything that you've come across, something strange that you want to get off your chest or just talk about, you can do it here on the show. I've had many guests on the show, and they really, really got their stories out. I'm glad they did it here. A lot of times it was their first time getting out, and they decided to do it on Alien Strand. We don't judge you here, that's why. We keep a very open mind, and, we want to make sure that you guys have an open mind as well. So if you can, please share this podcast today. Share any other ones that I have out there. You can start backwards if you want to. The first 10 are a little rough if you start from the beginning, but I believe you can work your way backwards, right? And just go ahead and listen to them. They're in no order at all, but you'll get all the content there as well. So I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to this show and just waiting for me to put another one out there. I really had a good time today. Like I said, you can reach us on all those platforms. We're here for you guys, and we're going to get some more information out, as soon as it comes in. And if we got any new stories, we'll get it out to you. Catch us on Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and alienstrand.com. And don't forget to check us out on Verbal and our new Alien Strand app. But until then, you guys have yourselves a good day. Have yourselves a good evening. And have yourselves a good night.
What's
What's up, guys? This is Mike Beavers from The Theory, and you are listening to Alien Strand Podcast, the dopest UFO alien podcast out there. And if you want to find out about me, just go on YouTube and search UFOs over UFO or The Theory with Mike Beavers. Stay tuned, guys.
Wake up at Holiday Inn Express to a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. Count on all the hot, fresh coffee you need and an incredible breakfast buffet that has something for everyone, like eggs, cinnamon rolls, and even hot, fresh pancakes with all the toppings you crave. Next time, do yourself a favor and stay at a Holiday Inn Express with a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. So, when you wake up at Holiday Inn Express, you'll wake up happy, a part of IHG Hotels and Resorts.